73% of professionals say they feel like a fraud at work. Not occasionally, regularly. That number comes from a 2023 study published in the Journal of General Internal Medicine, and it means something uncomfortable. It means the person sitting across from you in that meeting, the one who looks calm and certain, probably is not. And it means you, right now, listening to this, are not broken. You are normal, but normal is not the goal. And the next 85 minutes are going to change what you accept as normal. Here is something most people will never hear. Confidence is not a personality trait. It is not genetic. It is not something you are born with or born without. Confidence is a neurological pattern. It is a measurable, repeatable signal in your brain that strengthens or weakens based on one thing and one thing only. What you do every day. Let that land for a moment. Because if that is true, and decades of neuroscience confirm that it is, then everything you have been told about confidence is wrong. Every motivational speech that told you to just believe in yourself. Every article that said to think positive. Every well-meaning friend who said fake it until you make it. All of it missed the mechanism. And without the mechanism, you have been trying to build a house without a foundation. This audiobook is not going to ask you to believe anything. It is going to ask you to do things. Specific things. Daily things. And by the end of 30 days, your brain will have physically restructured itself to produce confidence as a default output. That is not metaphor. That is neuroscience. But before we build the system, we need to destroy the lie. And the lie is this. You think your problem is low confidence. It is not. Your problem is that you have been building confidence on the wrong foundation. Let me explain what I mean. Most people treat confidence like weather. It comes, it goes, and you have no control over it. Monday morning you wake up feeling sharp. You walk into a meeting and you own the room. By Wednesday something shifts. Someone questions your idea. Your manager pauses a beat too long before responding to your email. And suddenly, that confident person from Monday is gone, replaced by someone who rehearses conversations in their head, who hesitates before speaking, who leaves the meeting thinking they should have said something different. Sound familiar? That is not a confidence problem. That is a dependency problem. You have made your confidence dependent on external feedback. And anything that depends on external input is, by definition, unstable. A 2019 study from the University of California, Berkeley found something that should change the way you think about this permanently. Researchers tracked 2 groups of professionals over 18 months. The first group scored high on what psychologists call externally referenced self-esteem. Their confidence rose and fell based on feedback, recognition, and social comparison. The second group scored high on internally referenced self-trust. Their confidence was rooted in behavioral consistency, meaning they trusted themselves because they had evidence of follow-through. Here is what the data showed. After 18 months, the externally referenced group had a 41% higher rate of anxiety-related performance decline. The internally referenced group did not just maintain performance. They improved. Steadily, quietly, without dramatic highs and lows. The difference was not talent. It was not experience. It was not intelligence. The difference was what their confidence was built on. And this is the first critical distinction you need to understand. There are 2 types of confidence operating in the world right now, and most people are running on the wrong one. The average professional builds confidence from the outside in. They feel confident when they get praise. They feel confident when they get the promotion, when someone validates their opinion, when the room agrees with them. The moment that external signal disappears, their confidence collapses. It was never theirs. It was borrowed. Elite performers build confidence from the inside out. They feel grounded not because the world is giving them approval, but because they kept a promise to themselves that morning. They showed up when they said they would. They executed when they did not feel like it. They have a track record with themselves, and that track record is what confidence actually is. This is not philosophy. This is measurable brain science. When you follow through on a commitment you made to yourself, your prefrontal cortex registers it as evidence of reliability. Over time, this creates a neural pathway that your brain codes as self-trust. The more you activate that pathway, the stronger it gets. The stronger it gets, the more automatically your brain defaults to confidence under pressure. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford University's School of Medicine describes this process as autonomic self-regulation. In simple terms, your brain learns to regulate its own fear response based on accumulated proof that you can handle hard things. Not because someone told you that you can, because you showed yourself that you can. Repeatedly. This is the mechanism. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Think about someone you know who radiates quiet confidence. Not arrogance. Not loudness. Just a settled, unshakable presence. Have you ever noticed that person is almost always someone who is disciplined? Someone who shows up consistently? Someone who follows through? That is not a coincidence. Their consistency built the neural architecture of self-trust, and self-trust is the engine that confidence runs on. Now think about your own life. Not with judgment, with honesty. How many promises have you made to yourself and broken? How many times have you said you would wake up early and hit snooze? Said you would start the project and scrolled your phone instead? Said you would speak up in the meeting and stayed quiet? Every single one of those broken promises registered in your brain, not as a small thing, as evidence. Evidence that you cannot be trusted. And your brain, being the pattern recognition machine that it is, updated its model accordingly. It lowered your default confidence setting, not because you are weak, because your brain is doing exactly what brains do. It is making predictions based on past behavior. Here is the part that changes everything. If broken promises lower your confidence set point, then kept promises raise it. Not affirmations, not visualization, not motivational videos. Kept promises, exposed reps, behavioral proof. The average person tries to think their way into confidence. They read books, they consume content, they tell themselves they are worthy. And none of it sticks, because the brain does not update its model based on what you think. It updates based on what you do. Elite performers understand this intuitively. They do not wait to feel confident. They act in alignment with the person they are becoming, and confidence shows up as a byproduct. Not before the action, after it. This is the fundamental reframe of this entire audiobook. Confidence is not the input. It is the output. You do not need confidence to act. You need action to build confidence. And the specific actions matter enormously, which is exactly what the next 9 chapters are going to give you. McKinsey's 2022 Organizational Health Survey analyzed over 300,000 professionals across 47 countries. The finding that most people overlook is this. The top-performing 8% did not report higher baseline confidence than everyone else. They reported higher behavioral consistency. They had daily systems. They had non-negotiable routines. They had identity-level habits that they protected regardless of how they felt on any given morning. Their confidence was not a feeling they chased. It was a structure they built. And that structure is exactly what you are going to build over the next 30 days. But here is what you need to know before we go further. Knowing this is not enough. You now understand that confidence is a neurological pattern built through behavioral repetition. That is more than 95% of people ever learn. But understanding the mechanism without the daily protocol is like having a blueprint without tools. In the next chapter, you're going to learn the single most important shift that separates people who struggle with confidence for years from those who build it in weeks. It is called the identity switch, and it will fundamentally change the way you make decisions starting tomorrow morning. Chapter 2. The Identity Switch. Confident people do not feel confident most of the time. Read that again. The people you admire, the ones who speak clearly under pressure, who make decisions without spiraling, who walk into rooms and seem unshakable, they are not operating from a feeling. They are operating from a decision. And that decision is the single most important thing you will learn in this entire audiobook. Here is the paradox that ruins most people. They wait to feel confident before they act. And because they wait, they never act. And because they never act, they never collect the evidence that would make them confident. It is a closed loop, a trap disguised as common sense. You have probably been stuck in it for years without realizing it. The average professional wakes up and checks their internal weather. Do I feel good today? Do I feel ready? Do I feel like I can handle that conversation, that presentation, that decision? And if the answer is no, they pull back. They stay quiet. They delay. They tell themselves tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow, they run the same check. And most mornings, The answer is the same. Not ready. Not yet. Not today. This is not a confidence problem. This is an operating system problem. And the operating system is broken because it is running on the wrong input. Here is what the research confirms. A 2020 study published in the journal Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin tracked 640 professionals over 12 months. The researchers were looking for the single strongest predictor of sustained confidence over time. It was not positive thinking. It was not past success. It was not social support. The strongest predictor was what they called identity-behavior alignment. In plain language, the people who consistently acted in alignment with who they said they wanted to be developed the most durable, pressure-resistant confidence. Not because acting made them feel good, because acting gave their brain proof that they were who they claimed to be. This is the identity switch, and it changes everything about how you approach your day. Right now, your decision-making process looks something like this. A situation appears. Your brain checks your emotional state. If the emotion is favorable, you act. If the emotion is unfavorable, you hesitate, avoid, or overthink. The emotion is the gatekeeper. Nothing gets through without its permission. The identity switch reverses this entirely. Instead of asking, "How do I feel?" you ask, "Who am I?" Not "Who do I want to be someday?" Who am I right now, today, based on the standards I have committed to? And then you act from that identity regardless of what the emotion is doing. This is not motivational language. This is the operational difference between people who build confidence and people who chase it forever. Let me make this concrete. Imagine you have a meeting in 2 hours where you need to challenge a senior colleague's proposal. The old operating system runs the feeling check. You feel anxious. Your stomach tightens. Your brain starts generating scenarios where it goes badly. So you soften your language. You hedge. You agree with things you do not actually agree with. You leave the meeting relieved that it is over, but quietly frustrated with yourself. And that frustration is not random. It is your brain registering another data point. You did not show up as the person you want to be. Self-trust decreases. Confidence drops. Now run the same scenario through the identity switch. The meeting is in 2 hours. The anxiety is there. The stomach tightness is there. But instead of checking the feeling, you check the identity. You ask yourself one question. What would the person I am becoming do right now? And the answer is clear. That person prepares their points. That person speaks directly. That person does not need the room to agree with them to feel okay. So you act from that standard. Not because the anxiety disappeared. It did not. But because you made the decision to operate from identity instead of mood. And here is the neurological payoff. After that meeting, regardless of the outcome, your prefrontal cortex registers something powerful. You showed up. You acted under pressure. You kept the standard. And that registration is a confidence deposit. Your brain updates its predictive model. Next time a similar situation arises, the anxiety will be slightly lower. The hesitation will be slightly shorter. Not because you convinced yourself to be confident, because you gave your brain real evidence that you can handle it. Dr. Albert Bandura, the Stanford psychologist who spent 4 decades studying self-efficacy, called this mastery experience. It is the most potent source of confidence in all of psychological research. Not verbal encouragement, not watching others succeed, not managing your emotional state. Direct, personal evidence that you acted and survived. That is what builds the neural foundation of self-trust. And the compounding effect is staggering. Research from the American Psychological Association's 2021 meta-analysis of self-efficacy studies found that individuals who accumulated consistent mastery experiences over a 90-day period showed a 33% increase in self-reported confidence and, more importantly, a 28% improvement in objective performance metrics. The confidence was not cosmetic. It translated into measurable results. But here is where most people get this wrong. They think the identity switch means pretending to be someone they are not, acting a role, performing confidence. That is not what this is. This is the opposite. The identity switch is about closing the gap between who you already know you can be and how you are currently showing up. You already know you are capable. That is not the issue. The issue is that your daily behavior does not match that knowledge. You know you should speak up, but you stay quiet. You know you should decide, but you deliberate endlessly. You know you should act, but you wait for the feeling to arrive first. The gap between knowing and doing is where confidence goes to die. And the identity switch closes that gap by removing the emotional prerequisite entirely. The average person says, "I will act confident when I feel confident." The elite performer says, "I will act according to my standards and let the feeling catch up." It always does, but it only catches up after the action, never before. This is not about ignoring emotions. Emotions are data. They tell you something is happening, but data is not a decision. You do not let your fuel gauge decide where you drive. You check it, you note it, and you drive where you need to go. The identity switch treats emotion the same way. You feel the anxiety, you acknowledge it, and then you act from your standard anyway. Now, here is the practical piece you can use starting tomorrow. Before your first decision of the day, ask yourself this question. If the person I am becoming were living today, what would they do in the next 60 minutes? Not the next year, not the next month, the next 60 minutes. And then do that thing, whether you feel like it or not, whether the emotion cooperates or not. That single question, repeated daily, begins to rewire the decision pathway in your brain. Within 2 weeks of consistent practice, the University of London's Behavioral Research Unit found that identity-based decision prompts reduced hesitation latency by an average of 40%. People did not just feel more decisive. They measurably became more decisive. Their brains adapted to the new pattern. This is the power of the identity switch. It does not ask you to become a different person. It asks you to stop betraying the person you already are. But knowing the switch exists is only part of the equation. The real question is, when does it get activated? When is the exact moment each day where your brain decides whether you are someone who follows through or someone who folds? That moment is more specific than you think. It happens before you are fully awake. It happens in the first 5 seconds after your alarm goes off. And what you do in those 5 seconds sets the neurological tone for every decision you make for the rest of the day. That is exactly what the next chapter is about. And once you understand it, you will never hear your alarm the same way again. Chapter 3. The first 5 seconds. Every morning, before you are fully conscious, your brain runs a test. You do not see it. You do not feel it happening, but it happens. And the result of that test determines how much confidence you carry into every conversation, every decision, and every pressure moment for the rest of that day. The test takes 5 seconds. It starts the instant your alarm goes off. And right now, you are probably failing it. Here is what happens neurologically in those 5 seconds. Your alarm sounds. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for discipline, planning, and executive function, is still partially offline. It takes roughly 90 seconds to fully activate after waking. But your limbic system, the ancient part of your brain that governs comfort-seeking and threat avoidance, is already wide awake. It has been running all night. And the moment that alarm sounds, it sends a single, powerful signal. Stay. The bed is warm. The day is hard. You are tired. Stay. This is not laziness. This is neurobiology. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Conserve energy. Avoid discomfort. Choose the path of least resistance. And in that 5-second window, before your conscious mind fully arrives, you make a choice. You either override the signal or you obey it. If you hit snooze, here is what your brain records. The first challenge of the day appeared, and you chose comfort. That does not stay in the morning. That follows you. Dr. Hal Elrod, author and behavioral researcher, identifies this as the first domino principle. The first decision of the day creates a neurological momentum that cascades through every subsequent decision. When the first decision is surrender, the threshold for the next surrender drops. And the next, and the next. Think about what that means practically. You hit snooze at 6:30. By 6:45, you are rushing. By 7:15, you skip the thing you said you would do. By 9, you are in a meeting and someone pushes back on your idea. The threshold for folding is already low because your brain set the pattern 5 hours ago. You stayed quiet. You did not push back. And tonight, you will wonder why you lack confidence. But the answer was decided before you brushed your teeth. Now here is the dopamine piece that makes this even more critical. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford University School of Medicine explains that the first 90 minutes of your day establish what he calls your dopamine baseline. The actions you take in that window train your brain's reward circuitry for the next 12 to 14 hours. If those first actions are passive, comfort-driven, and reactive, your dopamine system calibrates to a low-effort setting. You will spend the rest of the day unconsciously seeking the easiest path. But if those first actions are deliberate, slightly uncomfortable, and self-directed, your dopamine baseline shifts upward. Your brain calibrates to a higher effort setting. You become more likely to choose the difficult conversation over the easy silence. More likely to make the decision instead of deferring it. More likely to act like the person you described in the last chapter. 5 seconds. That is the window. And most people lose the entire day inside it. The average professional treats the morning alarm as a negotiation. The alarm goes off. The internal dialogue starts. Maybe 5 more minutes. I went to bed late. I will start tomorrow. I deserve rest. And every one of those justifications feels rational in the moment. But they are not rational. They are the limbic system constructing a story to protect its preference for comfort. And every time you accept that story, you are rehearsing a pattern. The pattern of self-betrayal. Self-betrayal is not a dramatic word. It is a precise one. When you tell yourself you will wake up at 6 and you wake up at 6:45, you have broken a contract with yourself. Your conscious mind may forget about it by noon. Your subconscious does not forget. It files it as evidence. And over weeks and months of filed evidence, your brain reaches a conclusion that you experience as low confidence, but is actually something more specific. It is low self-trust. You do not trust yourself to do what you said you would do. And a person who does not trust themselves cannot feel confident. It is neurologically impossible. Here is the practical reversal. And this is something you can implement tomorrow morning. When your alarm goes off, you have 5 seconds before the limbic override fully engages. In those 5 seconds, move. Not think. Move. Put your feet on the floor. Stand up. The physical action interrupts the limbic negotiation before it gains momentum. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to feel motivated. You need to move before the feeling has time to construct its argument. This is not willpower. Willpower is a depletable resource, and relying on it is a losing strategy. This is pattern interruption. You are using physical motion to bypass the comfort signal before it becomes a decision. Mel Robbins popularized this as a countdown method, and there is solid neuroscience supporting it. Research from the National Institute of Mental Health shows that physical movement within the first 10 seconds of an impulse significantly reduces amygdala activation, the brain's fear and avoidance center. You are not fighting the fear. You are moving before it fully forms. Now here is where this connects to everything we discussed in the previous chapter. Remember the identity switch. The question was, what would the person I am becoming do right now? The alarm is the first place you ask that question every day. And the answer is always the same. That person gets up. That person does not negotiate with comfort. That person treats the alarm not as a suggestion, but as a commitment. Elite performers do not have more willpower in the morning. A 2018 study from the University of Pennsylvania's psychology department found no significant difference in baseline willpower between high performers and average performers. The difference was in decision architecture. High performers had pre-decided. They removed the negotiation from the equation entirely. The alarm was not a question. It was an answer. And that pre-decision meant their prefrontal cortex did not have to fight the limbic system every morning. The battle was already won the night before. This is what you are going to start doing. Tonight, before you sleep, you will set your alarm and make one statement to yourself. When this alarm goes off, I stand up. That is it. No elaborate morning routine. No 5-step ritual. Just the commitment to stand. Because that single action, repeated daily, begins to rebuild the most important thing you have lost. Trust in your own word. And here is what happens when you stack 7 consecutive days of this. Just 7. The University of Chicago's Behavioral Science Lab found that 7 consecutive days of kept micro-commitments produced a measurable shift in self-efficacy scores. Not a small shift, a 19% increase in 1 week. Not because the action was impressive, Standing up is not impressive. But because the consistency of follow-through rewired the brain's prediction model, your subconscious went from expecting you to fold to expecting you to follow through. And that expectation shift is the foundation of confidence. 7 days, 19%, from one decision that takes 5 seconds. But here is what you need to understand. The alarm is just the entry point. It is the first deposit in a much larger account. The morning sets the tone, but what you do with the rest of the day determines whether that deposit compounds or gets withdrawn. In the next chapter, you are going to learn the exact mechanism that turns small daily actions into an unstoppable confidence engine. It is called the micro-proof architecture, and the science behind it explains why the most confident people you know are not doing big, dramatic things. They are doing small, boring things with terrifying consistency. That chapter will give you the specific framework to do the same. Chapter 4: Micro-Proof Architecture. 92% of people who set goals in January abandon them by March. That number comes from the University of Scranton's longitudinal research on behavioral commitment, and it has remained stubbornly consistent for over a decade. But here is the part nobody talks about. The people who quit did not lack motivation. 87% of them reported feeling highly motivated at the start. They had vision boards. They had journals. They had clarity about what they wanted. And they still failed. Because motivation was never the problem. The architecture was the problem. They built their confidence on goals. And goals, without a proof system, collapse under their own weight. This chapter is going to give you the architecture that does not collapse. And it starts with a counterintuitive truth. Big goals do not build confidence. Big goals destroy confidence. Here's why. When you set a large goal, your brain does something automatic and invisible. It compares where you are right now to where you want to be. And the gap between those 2 points generates a neurochemical response. Not excitement. Dread. Your amygdala interprets the size of the gap as danger. The bigger the goal, the bigger the perceived threat. And when your brain is in threat mode, it does not move toward the goal. It moves away from it. Procrastination, overthinking, second-guessing. These are not character flaws. They are threat responses to goals that are too large and too distant to generate proof. Dr. Teresa Amabile at Harvard Business School spent over 15 years studying what she calls the progress principle. Her research, based on nearly 12,000 daily diary entries from 238 professionals across 7 companies, revealed something that changed the field of organizational psychology. The single most powerful driver of motivation and confidence at work was not recognition. It was not compensation. It was not even achievement. It was the sense of making progress on meaningful work. Not completing it. Not finishing it. Making progress. Moving forward. Even by a small amount. And here is the critical data point. The progress did not need to be large to produce the effect. In fact, the researchers found that small wins, incremental advances that might seem trivial in isolation, generated disproportionately powerful psychological responses. A minor breakthrough on a difficult problem, a single task completed ahead of schedule, a small commitment honored. These micro-events triggered measurable increases in positive emotion, intrinsic motivation, and what Amabile calls inner work-life quality, which, in the context of confidence, translates directly to self-trust. This is the mechanism the goal-setting industry does not want you to understand. You do not need to achieve big things to feel confident. You need to achieve small things consistently. Because consistency of proof is what rewires the brain, not the size of the proof. Think of it this way. Your brain is a courtroom, and you are on trial. The charge is simple. Can this person be trusted to follow through? Your subconscious is the judge, and it does not care about your intentions, your vision, or your potential. It cares about evidence. Hard, behavioral, observable evidence. And every day, you are either submitting evidence for the defense or evidence for the prosecution. A kept promise to wake up on time. Evidence for the defense. 10 minutes of focused work before checking your phone. Evidence for the defense. One difficult conversation you did not avoid. Evidence for the defense. These are not dramatic. They are not impressive. Nobody will clap for you. But your brain is watching, and it is keeping score. This is what I call micro-proof architecture. It is a system for generating daily behavioral evidence that your brain uses to update its confidence prediction. And it works because it aligns with how the brain actually processes trust. The average person sets a 90-day goal and waits 90 days to feel confident about it. They spend 3 months in the gap between intention and evidence. And in that gap, doubt grows. Every day without visible proof is a day the prosecution adds to its case. By week 6, the doubt is overwhelming. They quit, not because the goal was wrong, because they starved their brain of evidence for too long. Elite performers do something radically different. They break the goal into daily proof units. Not milestones, not weekly reviews. Daily, non-negotiable, completable actions that each produce a micro-deposit of evidence. The goal is still there, but the focus is not on the goal. The focus is on today's proof. And today's proof is always small enough to complete, specific enough to verify, and meaningful enough to register. Here is the practical framework. Each day, you select one action that meets 3 criteria. First, it must be completable within the day. Not started, completed. Your brain does not give credit for works in progress. It gives credit for finished reps. Second, it must require slight discomfort. Not pain, not suffering. Just enough friction that completing it feels like a choice rather than an accident. Third, it must connect to the identity you are building. It should be something the person you are becoming would do. That is it. One action, 3 criteria. Every day. A 2021 study from the British Journal of Health Psychology found that participants who completed one identity-aligned micro-commitment per day for 30 days reported a 27% increase in general self-efficacy compared to a control group that set traditional outcome goals. The micro-commitment group also showed 41% lower rates of goal abandonment. They did not achieve more in raw output. They built more trust in their own capacity, and that trust carried into every other area of their lives. Here is an example. Say your identity target is to become someone who speaks with clarity and authority in professional settings. A traditional goal might be to deliver a keynote in 6 months. That goal creates a 6-month evidence vacuum. Your brain has nothing to work with. A micro-proof approach would look different. Today, you send one email where you state your position directly without hedging language. Tomorrow, you make one phone call where you do not apologize before making a request. The next day, you offer one opinion in a meeting without qualifying it. None of these will make a highlight reel. All of them will register in your neural architecture as proof. And the compounding effect is what makes this powerful. Behavioral neuroscience research from University College London, led by Dr. Philippa Lally, found that the average time to form an automatic behavior pattern is 66 days. But the self-trust benefits begin appearing much earlier. Participants reported a noticeable shift in self-perception after as few as 18 consecutive days of kept commitments. Not 66, 18. Because the brain does not wait for the habit to become automatic before updating its trust model. It starts revising the moment the pattern becomes detectable. 18 days of daily proof. That is what stands between where you are now and a measurable shift in how you see yourself. Not 18 months. Not 18 goals. 18 days of one small, uncomfortable, identity-aligned action completed without negotiation. But here is the warning, and this is critical. There is one behavior that will sabotage this entire system. It is something you probably do every week without realizing it. It feels productive. It feels like momentum. But neurologically, it drains the exact energy you need to follow through. It tricks your brain into thinking you have already succeeded before you have done anything at all. The next chapter reveals what this behavior is. And when you understand it, you will finally know why some of your best intentions have consistently died before becoming action. Chapter 5. The Silence Protocol. There is something you are doing almost every week that is quietly destroying your ability to follow through. It feels productive. It feels like progress. And the people around you will even encourage you to keep doing it. But neuroscience has proven that this one behavior drains the exact neurochemical fuel you need to execute on your commitments. And until you stop doing it, your confidence will keep leaking out before it has a chance to solidify. The behavior is talking about your goals. That probably sounds wrong. Everything you have been taught says you should share your goals. Tell people what you are working on. Make yourself accountable. Put it out there so the universe can align. It sounds logical. It sounds empowering. And it is neurologically backwards. Here is what actually happens in your brain when you announce a goal. In 2009, New York University psychologist Dr. Peter Gollwitzer published a landmark study in the journal Psychological Science. He ran 4 separate experiments with a total of 163 participants. Each experiment tested the same hypothesis. When people publicly declared their intentions, they were significantly less likely to follow through compared to people who kept their intentions private. Not slightly less likely, significantly. The reason is dopamine. When you tell someone about your goal, your brain registers the social acknowledgement as a form of completion. The listener nods. They say that is great. They tell you they believe in you. And your brain, which cannot distinguish between social validation and actual achievement, releases dopamine. The same dopamine it would release if you had actually done the work. You get the reward without the effort. And once the reward has been collected, the neurological drive to execute drops. Not because you are lazy, because your brain believes, based on the chemical signal, that progress has already been made. Dr. Gollwitzer calls this premature sense of completeness. Your identity goal feels partially fulfilled just by stating it. And that partial fulfillment is enough to reduce the tension that would otherwise push you to act. The gap between who you are and who you want to be narrows, not because you did something, but because you said something. And your brain does not know the difference. This is why the most disciplined people you will ever meet tend to be quiet about what they are building. Not because they are secretive, because they understand the cost of speaking too soon. Think about your own experience. How many times have you told a friend about a new project, a new routine, a new commitment, and felt a rush of energy in the conversation? You described the plan. You laid out the timeline. You felt organized, motivated, clear. And then the next morning, the energy was gone. The project stalled. The routine lasted 3 days. The commitment dissolved. You blame discipline. You blame motivation. But the real problem happened during the conversation. You spent the fuel before you used it. The average professional announces their transformation. They post about it. They discuss it at dinner. They text friends about the new routine they are starting. And every announcement is a small withdrawal from the execution account. By the time they sit down to actually do the work, the account is empty. The brain has already marked the intention as partially complete. Elite performers operate under what I call the silence protocol. They do not announce. They execute. They do not share the plan. They share the results. And only after the results are undeniable do they let the work speak for itself. This is not about being antisocial or withholding. It is about understanding the neurochemistry of execution. Your brain has a limited supply of goal-directed dopamine available for any given intention. Every time you talk about that intention in a way that generates social approval, you spend some of that supply. The research is clear. A 2015 follow-up study from the University of Zurich, building on Gollwitzer's original findings, measured dopamine-related activation in participants who shared goals versus those who stayed silent. The group that verbalized their goals showed 23% less sustained effort over the following 4 weeks. Not because they wanted it less, because their brain's reward system had already been partially satisfied. 23% less effort. From simply talking about what you plan to do. Now apply this to confidence specifically. Remember what we established in the previous chapters. Confidence is built through behavioral proof. Every kept promise is a deposit. Every completed microaction is evidence. The silence protocol protects those deposits by preventing premature withdrawal. When you stay silent about your commitments, you preserve the full neurological drive to complete them. And when you complete them, the confidence deposit hits with full force because there was no advance payout. Here is the practical application. Starting now, you are going to adopt a simple rule. Do not talk about what you are going to do. Talk about what you have done. This does not mean you never discuss goals. It means you create a 48-hour execution buffer. When you decide to commit to something, you give yourself 48 hours of silent action before you tell anyone about it. Those 48 hours allow you to collect real proof. And when you do finally share, you are not sharing an intention. You are sharing evidence. Your brain registers the difference. And so does the person listening. There is a second layer to the silence protocol that goes beyond dopamine. It addresses something equally corrosive to confidence: the need for external validation. When you announce a goal, you are implicitly asking for approval. Not always consciously, but the act of sharing, especially before you have proof, positions the listener as a judge. And once someone becomes a judge, their reaction starts to matter. If they are supportive, you feel energized. If they are skeptical, you feel deflated. Either way, you have outsourced your confidence to their response. You have made someone else the gatekeeper of how you feel about your own commitment. The silence protocol eliminates this entirely. When you execute in silence, you become the only audience that matters. Your self-trust is no longer contingent on someone else's reaction. You did the work. You know it is real. You do not need anyone to confirm that for you. And that shift from external validation to internal verification is one of the most powerful confidence upgrades available. Harvard Business Review published a 2020 analysis of high-performing executives across 93 Fortune 500 companies. The researchers identified what they called validation independence as a top 5 trait among the highest-rated leaders. These individuals did not seek approval before acting. They did not float ideas to gauge reactions before committing. They decided. They executed. They evaluated based on results. And their teams trusted them more, not less, because of it. Confidence that does not require an audience is the only kind that survives pressure. So here is your protocol. For the next 30 days, practice selective silence. When you feel the urge to tell someone about a new commitment, pause. Execute first. Let 48 hours of proof accumulate. Then, if you choose to share what you did, not what you plan to do. Watch what happens to your follow-through rate. Watch what happens to the stability of your confidence. And watch what happens to the way people respond to you. Because proof commands a different kind of respect than promises ever will. Now, you have the morning protocol. You have the micro-proof system. You have the silence discipline. These three together form the foundation of the 30-day architecture. But there is a fourth element, and without it, the entire structure has a ceiling. Because everything we have discussed so far works in conditions of comfort. The real question is what happens when things get hard, when the pressure rises, when someone challenges you, when the stakes are real and the anxiety spikes. Most people think pressure is the enemy of confidence. The next chapter is going to show you why that belief is exactly backwards, and why the most confident people you know did not build their confidence in spite of pressure. They built it because of pressure. Chapter 6. Pressure is the point. The most confident person in your life did not become confident because things went well for them. They became confident because things went badly and they did not break. That distinction sounds simple. It is not. It is the most misunderstood principle in all of personal development. Because every instinct you have is telling you to avoid discomfort, to wait for ideal conditions, to prepare until you feel ready. And that instinct is the exact thing keeping your confidence trapped at its current level. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Comfort is where confidence goes to decay. Not where it grows. Not where it strengthens. Where it decays. And if you have spent the last several years arranging your life to minimize friction, minimize confrontation, and minimize risk, you have not been protecting your confidence. You have been starving it. Let me show you why this is neurologically unavoidable. Your brain has a system called the stress inoculation response. It works almost identically to your immune system. When your body encounters a controlled dose of a pathogen through a vaccine, it does not get weaker. It builds antibodies. It gets stronger. Your stress response works the same way. When you voluntarily expose yourself to a manageable level of discomfort, your brain does not register damage. It registers training. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, recalibrates. The threshold for what triggers a fear response rises. Situations that used to paralyze you become manageable, not because the situation's changed, because your brain's capacity to handle them expanded. This is not theory. Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, the founder of positive psychology, spent over 30 years studying what separates people who collapse under adversity from people who grow through it. His research, spanning over 2,000 participants across military, corporate, and academic settings, identified one variable that predicted psychological resilience more powerfully than any other. It was not optimism. It was not social support. It was prior voluntary exposure to difficulty. The people who had deliberately placed themselves in uncomfortable situations before the crisis hit recovered faster, performed better under pressure, and reported significantly higher self-confidence afterward. Seligman's term for this is learned industriousness. But the concept is simpler than the language. Your brain builds confidence by surviving hard things, not by avoiding them. And critically, the hard things work best when they are chosen, not imposed. Voluntary discomfort carries a different neurological signature than involuntary hardship. When you choose the difficulty, your prefrontal cortex codes the experience as agency. You elected this. You were not a victim of circumstances. You walked into the pressure on purpose. And that coding of agency is what transforms stress from a threat into evidence of capability. This is where most people get stuck. They intellectually understand that growth requires discomfort. They have read the quotes. They have heard the podcasts. But when the moment arrives, when the opportunity to speak up, push back, or step forward into uncertainty is right in front of them, they retreat. Not because they forgot the principle, because the limbic system is faster than the prefrontal cortex. The avoidance impulse fires before the growth mindset has time to engage. And this is where the architecture you have been building in the previous chapters becomes critical. The identity switch from Chapter 2 gives you a decision framework that does not depend on emotion. The 5-second morning protocol from Chapter 3 trains your brain to override the comfort impulse daily. The micro-proof architecture from Chapter 4 ensures you are collecting evidence of follow-through. And the silence protocol from Chapter 5 preserves your execution fuel. Together, they create a foundation that makes voluntary discomfort sustainable. Not easy, sustainable. Here is the practical framework. I call it the daily pressure representative. Each day, in addition to your micro-proof action, you deliberately choose one moment of voluntary discomfort. Not something dangerous, not something reckless, something that makes your nervous system activate slightly, something that your old self would avoid. This could be sending a direct message instead of a passive one, making a request without over-explaining or apologizing, offering a dissenting opinion in a meeting, holding eye contact 2 seconds longer than feels comfortable, making a decision in under 60 seconds instead of deliberating for an hour, starting a conversation you have been avoiding. The action matters less than the mechanism. What matters is that you feel the resistance and act through it. Every single time you do this, your amygdala recalibrates downward. The threshold for avoidance rises, and the gap between the situations you can handle and the situations you currently avoid begins to close. Research from the United States Military Academy at West Point, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2019, tracked over 11,000 cadets through their first 2 years of training. The cadets who showed the greatest growth in self-reported confidence were not the ones with the highest baseline fitness or academic scores. They were the ones who most frequently engaged in voluntary challenge behaviors outside of their required duties. Extra training sessions, leadership of peer groups, volunteering for high-pressure assignments. The research team identified a dose-response relationship. More voluntary discomfort produced more confidence, and the effect was cumulative and durable, persisting for at least 18 months after the study period ended. The average person avoids pressure and wonders why they lack confidence. They construct a life designed for maximum comfort and then feel confused when they cannot perform under stress. They are not building antibodies. They are living in a sterile bubble. And the first time real pressure arrives, they have no immune response. Elite performers seek pressure deliberately. They do not enjoy it more than you do. The discomfort is real. The anxiety is real. But they understand the transaction. Short-term discomfort produces long-term capability. Every pressure rep is a deposit in the self-trust account. And they have made enough deposits that when a high-stakes moment arrives, their brain has a deep library of evidence that says you have handled hard things before. You will handle this too. Here is the part that surprises most people. You do not need large acts of courage to build this library. The West Point study found that the frequency of voluntary discomfort mattered more than the intensity. Daily small exposures outperformed occasional dramatic ones in building lasting confidence. One uncomfortable conversation per day was more effective than one extreme challenge per month, because the brain responds to pattern, not to spectacle. This means you do not need to sign up for an ultramarathon or give a speech to 1,000 people. You need to do one slightly uncomfortable thing every day. One rep, stacked, consistently, for 30 days. And by the end of that period, you will not recognize the person who started. A 2022 meta-analysis published in Clinical Psychology Review examined 47 studies on stress inoculation and found that participants who engaged in structured voluntary discomfort protocols for 4 weeks showed a 31% reduction in anxiety sensitivity and a 26% increase in perceived self-efficacy. The researchers concluded that controlled exposure to manageable stressors was among the most effective confidence-building interventions available. More effective than cognitive restructuring, more effective than positive affirmations, more effective than visualization. Action under pressure. That is what the brain trusts. So here is your addition to the daily system. You already have the morning protocol. You already have the micro-proof action. You already have the silence discipline. Now add the pressure rep. 1 moment per day where you choose discomfort over avoidance. Log it. Not publicly, privately, in a notebook, in a note on your phone, wherever you track your proof. Because every log pressure rep is another piece of evidence in your self-trust case file. Now, you have 4 systems working together. Morning protocol, micro-proof, silence, and pressure reps. These are the behavioral engines of confidence. But there is one force that can override all 4 of them if you do not address it directly. It is the oldest confidence killer in human psychology. It predates social media, predates corporate culture, predates modern life entirely. It is hardwired into your brain. And it is the reason that even people who do everything right still feel inadequate. The next chapter exposes this force. It is called the validation trap. And understanding it is the difference between confidence that depends on the room and confidence that belongs entirely to you. Chapter 7. The validation trap. Every 63 seconds, the average professional checks for a signal, an email reply, a message notification, a reaction to something they posted or said or sent. 63 seconds. That number comes from a 2022 study by the American Psychological Association on workplace attention patterns. And most people do not even realize they are doing it. It is automatic, reflexive, invisible. But underneath that reflex is something that has been eroding your confidence for years. You are not checking for information. You are checking for approval. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a person who owns their confidence and a person who rents it. Validation seeking is the oldest confidence killer in human psychology. It is not a modern problem created by social media, although social media has amplified it catastrophically. It is a survival mechanism encoded into your brain over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. In tribal environments, social approval was directly linked to survival. If the group accepted you, you ate. If the group rejected you, you were vulnerable. Your brain learned to monitor social signals constantly because your life literally depended on it. The problem is that your brain never updated the software. You no longer live in a tribe where rejection means death. But your amygdala does not know that. Every time you send an email and wait anxiously for the reply, every time you share an idea and scan the room for reactions, every time you make a decision and immediately look for confirmation that it was the right one, your ancient brain is running the same survival calculation. Am I accepted? Am I safe? Am I enough? And here is why this destroys confidence specifically. When you seek validation before you trust your own judgment, you are telling your brain that external input is more reliable than internal evidence. You are training your neural circuitry to outsource the evaluation of your own competence. And over time, that outsourcing becomes structural. Your brain stops generating self-referential confidence signals because it has learned that the external signal is the one that matters. You become neurologically dependent on other people's reactions to feel okay about yourself. Dr. Mark Leary at Duke University has spent over 2 decades studying what he calls the sociometer theory of self-esteem. His research, published extensively in Psychological Bulletin and the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, demonstrates that self-esteem functions as an internal gauge of perceived social acceptance. When you believe others approve of you, self-esteem rises. When you sense disapproval, it drops. This system was adaptive in ancestral environments. In modern professional settings, it is catastrophic because it means your confidence fluctuates based on signals you cannot control. A delayed email response, a neutral facial expression in a meeting, a colleague who did not acknowledge your contribution. None of these are objective measures of your competence, but your sociometer reads them as data and adjusts your confidence accordingly. This is the trap. You cannot build stable confidence on an unstable input, and other people's reactions are the most unstable input available. The average professional checks their sociometer dozens of times per day without knowing it. They finish a presentation and immediately scan for positive reactions. They send a proposal and check their inbox every few minutes. They make a decision and then quietly poll colleagues to see if they agree. Each of these behaviors feels normal, but each one is a small act of self-trust erosion, because the implicit message to your brain is, I cannot evaluate this myself. I need someone else to tell me if it was good enough. Elite performers do something fundamentally different. They evaluate internally first. Before they check the room, before they read the replies, before they ask for opinions, they ask themselves one question. Based on my standards, did I execute this the way I intended? If the answer is yes, the external reaction becomes informational rather than existential. They can hear feedback without being destabilized by it. They can receive criticism without interpreting it as a referendum on their worth. Because their confidence is sourced internally, it is not dependent on the room. This does not mean they ignore feedback. Feedback is valuable, but there is a critical difference between using feedback to improve and needing feedback to feel confident. The first is growth. The second is dependency, and dependency is the enemy of everything you are building. Here is the neuroscience behind the solution. A 2021 study from the University of Michigan's Department of Psychology measured brain activation patterns in participants who practiced what the researchers called self-referential evaluation. Before receiving external feedback on a task, participants were asked to rate their own performance against a personal standard. The group that practiced self-evaluation first showed significantly lower amygdala reactivity when receiving negative feedback compared to a control group that received feedback without self-evaluation. The decrease was 37%. 37% less emotional reactivity to criticism. Not because they became emotionless, because they had already anchored their assessment internally. The external signal hit a brain that had already formed its own conclusion. And when your brain has a conclusion, conflicting input is processed as perspective rather than threat. This is the mechanism you are going to install. Every time you complete an action that matters, before you check for external response, you pause and answer 3 questions internally. Did I execute according to my standard? What would I do differently? What did I do well? These 3 questions take less than 60 seconds, but they fundamentally change the neurological sequence. Instead of action followed by external scan followed by emotional reaction, the sequence becomes action followed by internal evaluation followed by external input as data. The confidence lives in the middle step, and you control the middle step entirely. Here is a concrete example. You just led a team meeting where you proposed a new direction. The old pattern is to walk out and immediately read the room. Who seemed convinced? Who looked skeptical? Did they like it? The new pattern is different. You walk out. You sit for 60 seconds. You ask yourself, did I say what I intended to say? Did I present the reasoning clearly? Did I hold my position without unnecessary hedging? If the answers are yes, you have your confidence deposit. The room's reaction becomes useful information, not an emotional verdict. A 2019 analysis published in the Journal of Organizational Behavior studied over 400 managers across 12 industries. The researchers found that leaders who demonstrated high validation independence, defined as the ability to self-evaluate before seeking external confirmation, receive 22% higher trust ratings from their teams. Their direct reports describe them as more decisive, more stable, and more reliable under pressure. Not because they ignored their teams, because they did not need their teams to feel confident. And paradoxically, that independence made them more trustworthy, not less. The people around you can feel the difference between someone who seeks their approval and someone who has already approved of themselves. The first creates a subtle pressure. The second creates a subtle safety. And that safety is what makes people want to follow you, trust you, and take you seriously. So here is your addition to the daily system. After every significant action, before you check external signals, practice the 60-second self-evaluation. 3 questions. 60 seconds. Internal anchor first, external data second. Do this consistently for 2 weeks, and you will notice something remarkable. The anxiety around other people's reactions will begin to dissolve. Not because you stopped caring, because you stopped needing. You now have 5 systems in place. Morning protocol, microproof, silence discipline, pressure reps, validation independence. These 5 are the behavioral engine of unshakable confidence. But there is one more element that most people never access because it requires a level of honesty that feels uncomfortable. It requires you to look at your life not as a story you tell yourself, but as a set of evidence that already exists. Your bank account, your health, your habits, your relationships. These are not abstract concepts. They are data, and that data is already telling you exactly who you are. The next chapter introduces the mirror test, and it will be the most uncomfortable and most liberating chapter in this entire audiobook. Chapter 8, the mirror test. Nobody has ever told you this, and there is a reason why. What I am about to share is the single most effective confidence diagnostic ever developed. It requires no test, no assessment, no therapist, no coach. It takes less than 5 minutes, and it will tell you, with brutal precision, exactly where your confidence actually stands. Not where you think it stands, not where you hope it stands, where the evidence says it stands. Most people avoid this for their entire lives, and that avoidance is exactly why their confidence never stabilizes. The mirror test is not a metaphor. It is a methodology, and it works like this. You look at 4 areas of your life: your finances, your health, your daily habits, your relationships, and you ask one question about each. What does the evidence say about who I am? Not who you want to be, not who you are working on becoming, who you are right now, based on observable, measurable, undeniable evidence. This sounds harsh. It is not. It is the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself. Because self-deception is not protection. Self-deception is the reason you have been stuck. And the mirror test ends the deception without judgment, without shame, and without drama. It simply asks you to look at what is already true. Here is the psychological basis. Dr. Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia spent over 2 decades researching what he calls the adaptive unconscious. His work, published in his landmark book and across multiple peer-reviewed journals, demonstrates that humans maintain a curated self-narrative that frequently diverges from behavioral reality. In simple terms, you tell yourself a story about who you are, and that story is often significantly different from what your actions actually demonstrate. Wilson's research found that this gap between narrative identity and behavioral identity is one of the primary sources of chronic low confidence. Because on some level, you know the story does not match the evidence. And that dissonance creates a low-grade psychological tension that undermines everything you try to build on top of it. The mirror test resolves the dissonance by eliminating the story and focusing exclusively on the evidence. Let me walk you through it. Take your finances first. Not your income, not your potential, your actual financial behavior over the last 90 days. Are you spending more than you earn? Are you avoiding looking at your accounts? Do you have savings that reflect someone who plans ahead? Or does your bank balance reflect someone who reacts to whatever is in front of them? There is no right or wrong answer. There is only what is true. And what is true tells your subconscious something about the identity you are actually operating from. Now your health, not your knowledge about health. Your behavior. Over the last 90 days, how have you treated your body? Are you sleeping in a way that reflects someone who values their energy? Are you eating in a way that reflects someone who is building a high-performance system? Are you moving your body consistently? Or is exercise something you do when motivation happens to show up? Again, no judgment, just evidence. Now your daily habits. Look at the first and last hour of your day for the past month. What did you actually do? Not what you planned to do. What you did. Did the first hour reflect intention and design? Or did it reflect reaction and drift? Did the last hour prepare you for tomorrow? Or did it numb you from today? Your habits are not details. They are the most honest autobiography you will ever write. And finally, your relationships. Not how many people you know. How you show up with the people closest to you. Are you present or distracted? Do you initiate or wait? Do you say the difficult thing or avoid it? Are there conversations you have been postponing for weeks, months, years? The state of your closest relationships is a direct mirror of how much you trust yourself to handle emotional complexity. For domains, 90 days of evidence, 5 minutes of honest evaluation. That is the mirror test. And here is what it does for confidence. A 2020 study from the University of Toronto's psychology department examined the relationship between self-concept clarity and psychological resilience. Self-concept clarity means having a clear, consistent, evidence-based understanding of who you are. The researchers tracked 412 participants over 6 months and found that individuals with high self-concept clarity showed 44% greater resilience under stress and 31% higher baseline confidence compared to those with low clarity. The mechanism was straightforward. When you know who you are, based on evidence rather than aspiration, your brain does not waste energy maintaining a fragile self-image. It operates from solid ground. And solid ground is the only foundation that holds under pressure. The average person avoids self-assessment. They keep the narrative comfortable. They tell themselves they are healthy even though they have not exercised in 3 weeks. They tell themselves they are financially responsible even though they have not checked their account in a month. They tell themselves they are disciplined even though their morning routine has collapsed into scrolling. And every one of those comfortable narratives costs them. Because the subconscious is not fooled. It has the real data. And the gap between what you say and what you do creates the exact instability that makes confidence feel unreliable. Elite performers conduct the mirror test regularly, not as punishment, as calibration. They look at the evidence the way a pilot checks instruments before takeoff, not hoping the readings are good, just reading what is there. And when the evidence reveals a gap, they do not spiral into self-criticism. They adjust, because adjustment is what confident people do. They do not need to be perfect. They need to be accurate about where they stand so they can make precise corrections. Here is the practical protocol. Once per week, you are going to sit for 5 minutes and write 4 statements. Each statement begins with the same 5 words. The evidence shows that I. Then you complete the sentence based on what your behavior in that domain actually demonstrates. Not what you believe about yourself. What the last 7 days prove. The evidence shows that I am someone who exercises 3 times per week. Or the evidence shows that I am someone who has not moved intentionally in 10 days. The evidence shows that I am someone who makes financial decisions based on a plan. Or the evidence shows that I am someone who avoids looking at their bank account. Both versions are useful. Both versions build confidence. Because accuracy builds confidence. Self-deception does not. Research published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology in 2018 found that participants who practiced structured self-assessment for 4 weeks showed a 23% increase in what the researchers called authentic self-esteem. Unlike conventional self-esteem, which can be inflated by positive thinking and affirmations, authentic self-esteem is grounded in realistic self-knowledge. And the study found that authentic self-esteem was 3 times more resistant to social comparison and external criticism than conventional self-esteem. 3 times more resistant. Because it was built on truth, not on narrative. This is why the mirror test is liberating rather than punishing. When you stop pretending, you stop defending. When you stop defending, you free up an enormous amount of psychological energy that was previously spent maintaining the gap between story and reality. And that freed energy goes directly into action, into change, into the daily systems you are already building. The mirror test is not the end of the process. It is the accelerator. It shows you exactly where to focus your microproof actions, your pressure reps, and your identity-aligned decisions. It turns the entire 30-day system from a general protocol into a precision instrument aimed at the exact areas where your confidence needs the most reinforcement. You now have the diagnostic. You have the daily systems. You have the neurological understanding of how confidence is built, maintained, and protected. What remains is the complete protocol, the day-by-day architecture that puts all of this into a single, executable 30-day plan. The next chapter lays it out. Every phase, every day, every action. No ambiguity, no guesswork, just the system from day 1 to day 30. The 30-day protocol and the person you are becoming. 30 days from now, you will be a different person, not because something magical happens on day 30, but because by day 30, your brain will have accumulated enough behavioral evidence to permanently shift its default prediction about who you are. That is not aspiration. That is neuroscience. And the protocol you are about to receive is the exact architecture that makes it happen. No ambiguity, no interpretation, just the system, phase by phase, day by day, action by action. Everything you have learned in the previous 8 chapters, the identity switch, the morning protocol, the microproof architecture, the silence protocol, the pressure reps, the validation independence, and the mirror test, all of it converges here. This chapter organizes those tools into a structured 30-day sequence designed around one principle: progressive neurological loading. You do not start at full intensity. You build, layer by layer, the way your brain actually adapts. Research from the European Journal of Social Psychology, led by Dr. Philippa Lally at University College London, established that behavioral automaticity follows a nonlinear curve. The first 10 days show the steepest learning gradient. Days 11 through 20 consolidate the pattern under increasing complexity. Days 21 through 30 lock the behavior into identity-level operation. The protocol you are about to follow is built on that curve. Phase 1 runs from day 1 through day 10. This is the foundation phase. The objective is simple: establish behavioral proof that you can keep commitments to yourself. Here is what each day looks like. You wake up and execute the 5-second morning protocol. Alarm sounds, feet on the floor, no negotiation. That is your first confidence deposit of the day. Within the first 90 minutes, you complete one microproof action. It must be completable within the day. It must require slight discomfort. It must align with the identity you are building. After completing it, you practice the 60-second self-evaluation. 3 questions. Did I execute to my standard? What would I improve? What did I do well? Internal anchor before external signals. That is it for phase 1. 3 actions per day. Morning protocol. Microproof action. Self-evaluation. No pressure reps yet. No mirror test yet. Because your brain needs to first establish the baseline pattern of follow-through before adding complexity. A 2017 study from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business found that goal programs with progressive complexity had 58% higher completion rates than programs that launched at full intensity. Your brain does not respond to ambition. It responds to achievable consistency. By day 10, you will have accumulated 10 consecutive days of kept commitments. Your brain's prediction model has already started shifting. Phase 2 runs from day 11 through day 20. This is the pressure phase. The foundation is set. Now you add load. Everything from phase 1 continues as a non-negotiable daily fixture. On top of it, you add 2 new elements: the daily pressure rep from Chapter 6 and the silence protocol from Chapter 5. Each day, you choose one moment of voluntary discomfort, one situation where you act through resistance instead of avoiding it. You log it privately. No announcements, no social sharing. The silence protocol is active throughout phase 2. Whatever commitments you make, whatever progress you experience, you keep it to yourself for 48 hours minimum. Execute first. Evaluate internally. Share only after proof exists. The average person designs a self-improvement program for comfortable conditions. They plan for the days when motivation is high and obstacles are low. And the moment conditions shift, the program collapses because it was never stress tested. Elite performers build their systems for pressure from the beginning. They assume resistance. They expect friction. And they design the protocol to function specifically when conditions are not ideal. Phase 2 trains your brain for exactly that. By day 20, you have 20 consecutive days of morning protocol execution, 20 microproof deposits, 10 pressure reps, 10 days of active silence discipline. Your brain is now operating on a fundamentally different evidence base. Phase 3 runs from day 21 through day 30. This is the identity lock phase. Everything from phase 1 and phase 2 continues. You add the weekly mirror test from chapter 8. On day 21 and day 28, you sit for 5 minutes and complete 4 statements. Each begins with the evidence shows that finances, health, habits, relationships. You compare these to what you would have written on day 1. The gap is your confidence growth, measured not by feeling but by evidence. You also increase your pressure rep intensity. If you were making direct requests in phase 2, you lead a meeting in phase 3. If you were holding eye contact, you deliver a presentation. Progressive overload. The same principle that builds muscle builds neural confidence pathways. A 2023 study published in Frontiers in Psychology examined structured behavioral confidence programs across 800 participants. Programs that used a 3-phase progressive model showed 41% higher sustained confidence at 6-month follow-up compared to single-intensity approaches. The phased model worked because it matched the brain's natural adaptation curve. Here is the complete daily protocol. Phase 1, days 1 through 10. Wake with the 5-second protocol. Complete 1 microproof action. Practice 60-second self-evaluation. Phase 2, days 11 through 20. Continue phase 1. Add 1 daily pressure rep. Activate the silence protocol. Phase 3, days 21 through 30. Continue all previous actions. Conduct mirror test on days 21 and 28. Increase pressure rep intensity. That is the system. No guesswork. No improvisation. No waiting for the right mood. Just the protocol, executed daily, building evidence that your brain converts into durable self-trust. Now here is what determines whether this transformation is temporary or permanent. The average person finishes a program and celebrates completion. They treat day 30 as the finish line. And because it is a finish line, they stop. The protocol ends. The habits dissolve. Within 6 weeks, they are back where they started. They blame the method, but the framing was the problem. They treated the protocol as an event instead of an installation. Elite performers treat day 30 as the activation point, not the conclusion. The protocol does not end on day 30. It becomes invisible on day 30. The morning protocol is no longer something you do. It is how you wake up. The microproof action is no longer an assignment. It is how you operate. The pressure rep is no longer an exercise. It is how you engage with difficulty. The systems disappear into identity. An identity does not need a calendar notification. It runs automatically. Dr. Wendy Wood at the University of Southern California spent over 3 decades studying habit formation and behavioral automaticity. Her research, published in Psychological Review, demonstrates that once a behavior reaches automaticity, it requires approximately 90% less cognitive effort to maintain than it did to initiate. The 30-day protocol gets you to the threshold. What you do after day 30 determines whether you cross it. And crossing it requires only one thing. Do not stop. Not do more. Not add complexity. Just do not stop. Here is what your life looks like when this system is fully operational. You wake up and move without negotiation. You execute your commitments without waiting for motivation. You make decisions based on your standards rather than your emotions. You handle pressure without spiraling because your brain has a library of evidence that says you can. You evaluate yourself before checking with others. You speak directly. You act without apology. You hold your position without needing the room to validate it. None of this requires you to become someone you are not. It requires you to stop betraying who you already are. Remember the core message of this audiobook. Confidence is not what you feel. It is what you repeatedly prove. You have the proof system now. You have the architecture. You have the neuroscience. You have the protocol. What remains is the only thing that has ever mattered. Execution, not tomorrow, today. The 30 days start when you decide they start. And every day you execute is another day the person you are becoming gets closer to being the person you simply are. You press play on this audiobook because something in you knew you were capable of more than what you have been demonstrating. That instinct was correct. You are capable of more. And now you have the system to prove it. Not to anyone else, to yourself. That is unshakable confidence. Not a feeling you chase, a structure you build, and you are ready to build it.